Hello again, and welcome to GooseDrunks. Today, we're going to be reading the second half of Monster Blood. Very exciting. The rules are really simple. We drink if it's spooky, we drink if it's scary, and it also turns out we drink kind of whenever I want. Today, we're going to be drinking a beautiful Spanish red. It's actually surprisingly good. If you'll recall, the last thing that happened was Evan sat up, alert, wide awake, and he stared down at his giant feet and his big, big hands and his tiny, tiny bed, and he realized he had grown monstrously huge and started to scream, and then there was a cliffhanger, and then chapter 14, his screams woke him up. I hate RL Stine. I'm so sorry, RL, but I'm already drinking. Like, that's, oh! Like, I'm so mad. I really thought he had gotten giant. And so then RL is like, you see, he only thought he had woken up, but it was a dream. And he takes like 4 paragraphs to explain it. And I recognized that Inception hadn't come out yet, but like, come on. This is not a difficult concept. We can keep up. We are 12 years old. So yeah, when he wakes up, he's his normal size. Good for him. He looks out the window to check on Trigger, his sweet, sweet old dog. Trigger wasn't a monster, but he was definitely bigger. Evan's like, maybe it's his glance. He's 12. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I've had a sip of wine. Great. He starts to settle back into bed, but then something caught his eye. The coffee can on the bookshelf. The can where he had stored the monster blood. Hey, he cried aloud. The green gunk was bubbling, quivering up over the top of the coffee can. Dun, dun, dun. Get rid of it! I don't know what else to say here. Get rid of it. I'm gonna drink twice because that's a cliffhanger, but also stupid. Thank God. They take Trigger to the vet. The vet's name is Dr. Forrest, and because he's a doctor, he's going to be... I wish I could do more accents. I really can't. Like, I'm very bad at accents. I don't know if you guys can tell. We'll get a lab report in 3 or 4 days. It may tell us more, but the dog seems very healthy to me. I would not be alarmed. Yeah, that's just his voice now. I'm sorry. I took hormone tests and the blood and glandular samples. Maybe the lab will have an answer for us. So they leave the vet. Evan's like, I am glad to be out of there. And Andy's like, Trigger got a very good report. Evan's like, he's nearly as big as a sheepdog. And Dr. Forrest says he's perfectly okay. Andy's like, don't exaggerate. Oh no, I don't believe it. She like checks her watch. She's like, I'm late for my piano lesson again. Mom will kill me. Oh, Andy, always late for her piano lessons. I'm super less interested as soon as Andy leaves. Like, I don't care anymore. But I guess we have to keep reading. Evan's still worried, and he stops outside the grocery store. He's like, maybe an ice cream pop will help cheer me up. He ties Trigger's leash to the red fire hydrant across from the grocery store door. And then when he returns to the sidewalk 10 minutes later, he discovered the Bamer twins busily untying Trigger. Oh my God. Can I say from the bottom of my heart, fuck those guys? Jesus. So he yells at them to let go of his dog. Look what we found, one of them teased. The brothers laughed gleefully and slapped each other a high five. Drink for slapping each other a high five. It's my favorite stupid turn of phrase that RL thinks is real. I love it every time it comes up. Evan's like, please give me my dog back. And Dudley one is like, get your own dog. And then he like hits the ice cream out of Evan's hands, so he didn't even get to keep his ice cream. This is not Evan's day. The brothers started to laugh, but their laughter was cut short as Trigger suddenly uttered a low, warning growl. Good boy, Trigger. With a loud, angry roar, Trigger reared up and pounced on Dudley one, forcing him to stagger backward to the curb. Good boy, Trigger. Evan grabbed for Trigger's leash and missed. Trigger, whoa, stop! The dog took off after the fleeing twins, barking angrily, his enormous paws thudding loudly on the pavement, picking up speed as he closed in on them. Evan is horrified because he's like, it's my dream. It's coming true. Evan shuddered, remembering the rest of his dream, remembering how he too grew until he was twice his size. Would that part of the dream also come true? Dun, dun, dun. It's not really a cliffhanger, but it is the end of the chapter, so I'm gonna drink. So that afternoon, about an hour before dinner time, Evan calls Andy and is like, can I come over? I have a small problem. Sorry guys, I have to take like a 10-minute break to scratch under my cat's chin. I hope you do not mind. Anyway, back to Andy and Evan's big problem. Andy's like, it's not Dudley 1 and Dudley 2, is it? That's not your problem. Evan's like, well, not right now. I told you they were gone by the time I caught up with Trigger. Disappeared. Vanished. Someone found the thesaurus on Catherine's bookshelf. And Andy's like, I do not know what your problem is then. He's like, can't tell you, gotta show you. He hangs up the phone, hurries down the stairs, carrying a bucket. Catherine was in the kitchen, her back to him, chopping away at something with her big butcher knife. Evan hurried past and darted out the door. Andy's house was a modern redwood ranch style with a low hedge of evergreens running along the front. Cool detail, RL. We're halfway through the book. His dog is ballooning like a balloon. And he's like, oh, but it was a lovely ranch-style home with an evergreen hedge. Fuck you, RL. I'm busy. I'm worried about a dog. It's called priorities. And then we get like a full paragraph about the lawn and how her dad is a fanatic gardener with the lawn. I don't care. I do not care. So Andy lets him in. She's like, what's with the bucket? What is with the bucket? Tell us. So the monster blood has grown again. That's what's in the bucket. That's the thing. And it's almost filled the bucket. Throw it out. Nothing should be doing that. Throw it out. So Evan's like, what are we going to do? And Andy's like, what do you mean we? You were the one who didn't want to share it. He's like, I'll share it with you now. I have so much of it. Please take as much as you want. Andy's like, no thanks, not anymore. Fine, I'm getting less suspicious of Andy now. Jeez. I really want her to be a monster. That would be really great. Andy's like, can you put it like by the couch? It's giving me the creeps. And Evan's like, giving you the creeps? What am I gonna do? It's growing faster than Trigger. And then they're like, hey, wait a minute. Yes, that's right. Page 77. Halfway through this book, they both had the same thought. They suddenly remembered that Trigger had eaten a ball of the green gunk. I need a minute here. You mean to tell me that these kids are so dumb that Trigger eats a mysterious blob of substance, they don't know what it is, and immediately starts growing exponentially, which dogs should not do, and it just occurred to them that maybe the monster blood has something to do with it? Gang, I know that correlation does not equal causation, but I don't think they know that. Like, they should have assumed this. I'm gonna drink so much right now because that's impossibly dumb. Evan's like, what am I going to do? This stuff is getting bigger. Trigger's getting bigger. I am all alone here. There's no one who can help me. And Andy's like, what about your aunt? Maybe Catherine can think of something. Are you kidding? She can't hear me. Yeah, okay, Evan, because deaf people are incapable of being helpful? What's wrong with you, you insensitive piece of shit? Jesus. He's like, oh, she just sits with her jigsaw puzzle and argues with her horrible cat all day. The cat's a person. And then Andy suggests telling the vet, and then Evan's a piece of shit to her. He's like, oh yeah, for sure. He'd really believe Trigger is turning into a giant because I'm letting him eat monster blood. Like, be nice. You have one friend who's only possibly a monster at this point. Like, goddamn, dude. And then Andy, bless her heart, finally is like, what if we just, like, throw it out? What have I been saying this whole time? And Evan's like, we can't. And she's like, sure we can. Come on, I'll show you. He's like, what if it outgrows the trash can and keeps growing? She's like, I don't know, not our problem anymore. Sammy! So she reaches for the bucket handle and he like pushes her. He like pulls it out of her reach. Evan's like, I have to save it. If it's the thing causing Trigger to grow, I need it as proof. Proof of what? What are you going to do? And then Andy's like, maybe we call the police, because she's just spitballing at this point. She's like, I'm just going to run it up the flagpole and see who salutes. And Evan is a dick to her again, like, oh, sure, blah, blah, blah. Fuck you, Evan. Andy's at least coming up with ideas. You're just shooting everything down and contributing nothing. Isn't that just like men? He's like, okay, are you going to help me? Will you at least just take some of this stuff? And she's like, I guess, but just a little. Oh my god, she's super a monster. She's totally a monster, you guys. She left the room and quickly returned, carrying an empty coffee can that she just happened to have. Fill her up, she said, smiling. Oh no. Evan stared at the coffee can. That's all you're going to take? And then he's like, okay, all right, fine, it'll help. Andy crouched down and dipped the coffee can into the middle of the bucket. Hey, she cried out. Her hands flew up and she tumbled back onto the floor. Oh no. Evan's like, what's wrong? She's like, it was pulling the coffee can in. Like it was sucking it. It was sucking it up. Evan peered into the bucket. The coffee can had disappeared under the surface. And so Evan's like, all right, and just shoves both of his hands into the monster blood. No. Don't do that. Evan's like, it is pulling. You're right. It feels like it's pulling my hands down. It's so warm. As if it's alive. That's creepy. Because it was cold before, right? Ugh. And he's like, do not say that. Just get the can out, please. So he tugs hard. He pulls up the coffee can, filled to the top with the quivering green substance. Disgusting. Ugh. It's growing exponentially. How does taking some off the top help? It doesn't. And he's like, by the way, the Bamer twins, like, watch out for them. If Trigger scared them away, they're probably, like, looking for payback. So be careful. They think they're real tough. Evan's like, wow, thanks for trying to cheer me up. That's awesome. And Andy's like, I was watching a video before you came over on VHS, I assume. The first Indiana Jones movie. Which one's that, RL? This is a quick sidebar about the first Indiana Jones movie, aka Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is a serious sidebar, but hear me out. Okay, you know that famous scene at the beginning? I just watched it recently, where the girl, like, blinks her eyes real slow when he's, like, professoring. Class ends, and she just sprints out of the room.
Chapters 4 and 5 for next time. And I will be in my office on Thursday, but not...
Like, she doesn't even stick around. Like, girl, what was your end game? That must have taken forever. And for what? Just to make your professor uncomfortable during class? Like, it's a good power move, but like, Jesus, at least stay behind and give him your phone number. Back to business. I'm gonna drink because that was a dumb diversion, but I just wanted everyone to know. Okay. Anyway, Evan turns down her generous offer of watching Raiders, and he's like, I've gotta go. Aunt Catherine made dinner. She's chopping some meat, probably some beef. She closes the door, and he's halfway to the sidewalk when the Bamer twins slipped out from behind the evergreen hedge. Oh, good, it came back. Their hands balled in red, beefy fists. There's a lot of beef in this book. Anyway, dun dun dun. I'm gonna drink now. Evan's standing still, frozen in place, and the Bamer twins are standing there, staring at him, and no one's saying a word. There's only room for one of them in this town, or maybe two of them, depending on who wins this fight. One of the Bamers grabbed the bucket from Evan's hand and tossed it onto the ground, and all the gross stuff started oozing out into the grass. That's probably fine. He's like, hey, and then one of the twins punched him really, really hard in the stomach. Oh no, this is some real violence. Like, real violence, you guys. That's scary. It's not spooky, but it is scary. Another punch that landed on his cheek just below his right eye. Bad. I guess I'm gonna drink every time he gets punched. I don't know. When he finally managed to raise his head, Andy was standing over him, her eyes wide with alarm. He's like, are they gone? She's like, Dudley 1 and Dudley 2. Yeah, I saw them run away an hour ago. Not an hour ago. She did just see them run away, though. She's like, what happened? I feel like it's pretty self-evident, Andy. That is particularly dumb, especially for her. I expect more from you, Andy. I expect more. A few minutes later, Evan's back on his feet, breathing normally and rubbing his swollen cheek. He's like, I've never been in a fight before. And Andy's like, it was not a fight. Anytime Andy delights me, I drink. That was the rule last time, and I'm sticking to it. So Evan has noticed that the bucket with the monster blood in it is all over the grass. And Andy's like, all right, let's get it back in the bucket or my dad will kill us both. Their level of freaked out by the monster blood does not match the level it should be at this point. So they're trying to, like, pick it up. And they're like trying to grab handfuls, but it doesn't want to come apart. It wants to like all stick together like taffy. And so they work together and they manage to lift the entire green ball and drop it into the bucket. It made a sickening, sucking sound as it filled the bucket. And both Evan and Andy had trouble pulling their hands out of it. Yeah, that's not ominous. And they're both just like, wow, it's like it's trying to eat us. And then Evan's like, what are we going to do with this stuff? And Andy's like, we're just going to take it back to the toy store. No, you are. What? Honestly, I respect her thought process. At a certain point, like, what else are you going to do? I'm drinking it because, again, delightful. Evan didn't think it was such a hot idea. Okay, RL, geez. He didn't have the strength to argue, and that's called losing an argument. So he goes back to Catherine's, his head throbbing, his stomach aching. Wonder why. So he sneaks in through the garage and puts the bucket of monster blood behind an overturned wheelbarrow. Like houses have. So he changes into a clean pair of baggy shorts and a fresh t-shirt, hot, and carefully brushes his hair, and then they sit down at the dining room table, and Catherine's eyes fell on his swollen cheek. So Catherine's just staring at his cheek but not saying anything, which is very awkward because your cheek, I don't know if you know this, is on your face. But Evan's like all miserable, like, oh, she doesn't even care if I'm hurt or not. Like, blah, blah, blah. I have no doubt in my mind that Catherine is like secretly very nice and cool or whatever, and she's gonna like save the day at the end, and like Andy's the bad guy or something. It's like some big twist. Actually, you know what? If I were writing this story, that's what I would do, but I don't know if that's what RL is going to do. I have, let me tell you, zero faith in him. Exactly zero. I just want you to know what I would do, because I don't know if RL is going to do it, because I don't trust him. Anyway, I'm going to keep reading now. Evan waited in his room until he heard Catherine go to bed a little after 10 o'clock. Okay. Then he crept down the stairs and headed out to the garage. End of chapter. Not a dun-dun-dun, but I am going to drink because end of chapter. It was hear me out, a cool, clear night. Crickets sent up a relentless curtain of noise. The black sky glittered with tiny specks of stars. So he pulls out the bucket of monster blood. He moved the light to the center of the bucket and gasped. It's growing much faster than before, he thought. He carries it very slowly down the steps into the basement, because he's like, there's got to be something down there that I can just keep this thing in. The basement was one large room, as basements tend to be. It was cluttered with cartons, stacks of old newspapers and magazines, and old furniture and appliances covered in stained, yellowed bed sheets. Gross. Something brushed his face as he stepped away from the stairs. Yuck. That's spooky. I'm gonna drink. It brushes his face and he drops the bucket because he's an idiot. It was cobwebs. Happens, but he dropped the bucket, which is very dumb. And then he realized the web was not the thing moving against his cheek. It was a big fucking spider. Oh no! Okay, so he brushes the spider off his face, and then he says, even after he saw the insect scuttle across the floor, he could still feel its prickly feet moving on his face. You all know why I'm mad about that. Everyone knows this. Spiders, not an insect. Yep. All right, RL, you're an adult man. And then he's looking for a container for the monster blood, and then he sees like a long, low object. And he moves closer. It's an old bathtub. Ooh, you should find something with more of an airtight lid. But all right, you dumb little 12-year-old, let's see how the bathtub works. And when he pours it in the tub, it's like the tub is half full with it. He's like, surprised. He's like, wow, it's bigger. And so he's leaning over the tub, about to make his way back upstairs, when he hears a cat screech. A literal cat scare. Woohoo! Evan didn't have time to cry out as he toppled forward over the edge of the tub and into the thick green gunk. Dun, dun, dun. That's the rest of the wine. So he lands really hard on his elbows, but the monster blood softens his fall. The cat screeches and then walks away. Who cares? All that really mattered was a cat scare happened, and then he fell face first into the monster blood. So he's sinking into it, and his whole body is held by it as if stuck in cement. And he realizes it's trying to choke him because it's clearly alive. Well, he doesn't get to that. He doesn't get that far, but he does realize it's trying to choke him. So he pulls his head out just as the green gunk begins to cover his face. He twists his body and he turns it all around. And then with great effort, panting loudly, hoarse cries escaping his open lips, he pulled himself up into a sitting position. Good for him. The green substance rose up even higher, as if it were reaching up to him, reaching to drag him back down into it. Evan gripped the side of the tub with both hands, held onto it tightly, and began to force himself up. And so it's holding his shoulders, and it slides around his neck, and it sucks him down, and it pulls him in. And he's like, it got me. It's got me now. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so he gets into a strength contest with the gunk, and he rolls a 19 and the gunk rolls a 17, so it's real close, but he pulls his way out of there. And then he gets out of the tub and he's whoosh. And then he looks up, and Sarah Beth, who is a cat, even though her name is Sarah Beth, is standing a few feet away and staring at him. The next morning, Evan hasn't slept well. He brings a pad of yellow-lined paper and a marker to the breakfast table. So he writes down the following words in all caps. I'm going to try to pronounce it accordingly. I need your help. The bathtub downstairs is overflowing with green monster blood, and I can't stop it. So he holds up the pad like, look. So she's reading, and then her mouth spreads into a wide smile, which worries me. Evan's like baffled by her reaction. Obviously. She's like, do not kid an old woman. I thought you were serious. I guess you're not like your father at all. He never played any dumb jokes or tricks. Chicken was always such a serious boy. And Evan's like, I do not care about Chicken or my dad or whatever you're calling him. I am not telling you a joke. I am just as humorless as my dad is. It is genetic. Boom. And his aunt keeps laughing because she knows what's up, but she's going to pretend like it's not a big deal until like the final reveal, obviously, if I were writing it. And then her expression turns serious and she reaches out and she grabs his earlobe and squeezes. She's like, I warned you. I warned you to be careful. So he turns and leaves quickly. He's like, I knew she wasn't going to be any help. And then he like calls Andy. He's like, you're right. We have to return it to the store. Turns out on Andy's end, her monster blood outgrew the coffee can that she put it in. What a fucking shock. So they grab all the stuff. They're like, the toy store opens in 10. Let's go. And so they go. And so he somehow put the contents of the bathtub, which, need I remind you, was over half full, into a big plastic bag. Like, do you know how big bags are, RL? Must be like one of those stretch bags, the fancy ones. And then they get to the toy store and then they gape in shock. The door and window of the store were boarded up. A small hand-printed sign tacked to the top of the door read, out of business. Dun, dun, dun. And in the 90s, you have to try to go out of business in the 90s. I am just saying. All right, I'm taking a drink now. So they're pounding on the doors. Obviously, that doesn't help. And then across the street, a young woman is like, it closed a few days ago. You should have returned it when I said you should have, and then you wouldn't be in this mess. Evan's like slamming his hand into the door, and Andy's like, you are going to hurt yourself. A door is going to beat you up. I'm drunk enough that this is difficult to say words. Evan's like, do you have any other ideas? She's like, it is your turn to come up with a brilliant plan, my man. They look down at the garbage bags, and here's the thing. They're like moving around inside of the bags. Like, gross. Like, clearly this stuff is alive. Evan's just like, let's go back to Catherine's. We will think of something. They get back there, and Andy leans her bike against the side of the garage. But like, I thought Andy's bike was stolen by the Bamer twins, RL. She can't now have a bike. So Andy's like, look, there's like a big aluminum trash can with a lid that clamps, which they should have done in the first place, but whatever. They slide the bag of monster blood into the trash can and it rolls out like a tidal wave, like whoosh. And then they slam the lid, clamp it shut. Nothing will happen now. There are only 7 more chapters. Evan's like, now what? And before Andy could reply, they saw Catherine step out of the kitchen door. Her eyes searched the backyard until she spotted them. Evan, good news. Catherine was holding a yellow piece of paper in her hand. A telegram. It's the 90s, not the 1890s. What the fuck? Anyway, Catherine's saying that his mom is coming to pick him up that very afternoon. Whoa, you think she would have known that before she left? So why did she just... All of this is incredibly contrived. I'm like really mad right now because until this point, the writing has been very crisp and good and like on point and like stuff has been dumb, but it's kind of like made sense. And I've been like impressed with the writing, and I feel stupid now for being impressed with the writing because we're in the like the final bit of the book, the denouement, if you will. And suddenly they're getting telegrams and mom's gonna arrive today. Fuck you. And then he's like, woohoo, because not his problem anymore, right? And Andy is like, okay, you don't live here, but I do. What am I supposed to do, man? And Evan's just like, I don't care. Peace. Little sociopath. God bless. He raises his hand for Andy to slap him a high five, but she does not slap him a high five. She's like, shouldn't we tell someone about the monster blood? He's like, I'm going home. I'm going to get my dog. And then he goes outside and he's like, Trigger, we're going home. And he pulls open the gate and gasps. Dun, dun, dun. I really hate when the cliffhanger has to do with the dog. He had doubled in size since the day before. Before Evan could get up, Trigger began barking ferociously, and he was past the gate and thundering across the backyard toward the street. And Andy's like, wow, I don't believe it. Of course you do. Come on, girl. We've got to stop him. He might hurt someone, Evan cried. Trigger, come back. And so he starts running after his dog, who is not that well trained, and that's on Evan, dude. Like, come on. Trash can falls over. Lid comes off because it's not that secure on there, I guess. Hits the driveway with a loud clang, and the lid pops off, and the green gunk pours out, and it oozes from the can, making loud sucking noises, which I'm not gonna do with my mouth. And then it pulls itself up real tall, and the kids stare in silent horror. The quivering green mass appeared to come to life like a newly born creature, pulling itself up, stretching, looking around. Then, with a loud sucking sound, can he come up with a different way to describe this? With a loud sucking sound, it arched toward Evan, who was still sprawled on the toppled can, and Andy's like, get up, it's gonna roll right over you. Oh no! Dun dun dun! And chapter 22. The monster blood heaved itself against the garage wall, and it seemed to stick there for a brief second, and then it peeled off and came bouncing toward them with surprising speed. And they're like running and running and running, and Evan's voice is hoarse from screaming. He turned and saw that the monster blood was right behind them, and Andy's like, it's alive. Like, yeah, no shit, girl, come on. So they get to the front of the house, whatever the house is that's nearest, and then someone's like, what's happening? And they look up, see the Bamer twins, matching grins on their beefy faces. Mom's like, my favorite punching bag. And he raises his fist like this. And they take a few steps toward Evan and Andy, and then they're like, oh, it's a giant monster. I see it now. They threw their hands up, as if trying to shield themselves. Evan shut his eyes as it hit the twins with a deafening snap. And the green gunk oozed over them, covering them completely. And then it pulled them inside with, you guessed it, a loud sucking sound. Gang, it's like 11 more pages until the end, so I'm like keeping my fingers crossed the dog doesn't bite out. Their arms went limp and their faces disappeared into the quivering gunk. That sounds bad. The sucking sound grew louder. I bet it did. Do you get it? And then Catherine stepped out on the stoop. She's like, what are you kids doing? What is that? And the giant ball's like bouncing toward them like, I'm full of monster blood. I'm gonna eat everybody. Get it? Because I'm a monster, but I'm blood? I don't know. And she tosses up her hands in fright. She stands frozen for a long moment as if trying to make sense of what she was seeing. And then, leaving the front door wide open, she spun around and fled into the house. And the monster blood bounced in place once, twice, 3 times, considering what to do next. Evan and Andy gaped in horror from across the lawn, trying to catch their breath. And then the monster blood bounced high and hurtled up the stairs of the stoop. Evan's like, no! From the middle of the yard, Andy and Evan heard Catherine's blood-curdling scream, and then Evan's like, it's God, Aunt Catherine. I hope everyone gets eaten, and that's just the end of the book. So they run into the house, and Andy's like, what are you gonna do? And Evan's like, I don't know. The enormous glob filled the center of the small room. The Bamer twins were outlined in its side. Who cares? They're sociopaths who murder animals. I don't give a shit about them. They can die. It took Evan a few seconds to see his aunt. The bouncing hunk of monster blood had backed her against the fireplace. Okay, she's not absorbed yet. It's good. He's like, Aunt Catherine. She's like, go now. End of the book. Are you ready? Let's see if Catherine lives. Get out! Save our lives! I made this thing, and now I must die for it. That's a very sudden 11th hour reveal. But anyway, the point is, Catherine made it, and now it's eating her. End of chapter. Da da da! Evan felt the room tilt and begin to spin. He gripped the back of Catherine's armchair as pictures flooded his mind. And then he remembered the strange bone pendant, the mysterious books, Sarah Beth, the black cat with the glowing yellow eyes. Oh my god, maybe she's a witch. Did it ever occur to you? And he's like, the black shawl. That's not part of it. She's just chilly. Fuck. So dumb. These 12-year-olds are dumb. And Evan's like, you did this somehow. You cast a spell, even though that makes no sense. Her eyes filled with tears. Catherine, you tried so hard. No, Catherine cried, her back pressed tightly against the mantelpiece. I didn't do it. She did. And then she pointed an accusing finger at Andy. Dun, dun, dun. Evan turned and looked at Andy. But then Andy turned too. God damn it. She was pointing at Sarah Beth, the cat. Fuck's sake. Jesus. I was so proud of him, and now I'm so disappointed. And then Evan looked at Andy like, did you have anything to do with this? She's like, no, I'm just a normal, boring person. I didn't have any cool secret backstory or anything, even though I should have. All eyes were on the cat as it rose up, stretched and grew, and changed shape, became human. And Sarah Beth was now a young woman with fiery red hair and pale skin and yellow eyes. The same yellow cat eyes that had haunted Evan since he'd arrived. Catherine's like, see? She did it! Your spell over me is broken. I will do no more work for you. What? She goes, I'll decide what you will do, Catherine. Catherine's like, for 20 years you have used me, Sarah Beth. For 20 years you have imprisoned me, held me in your spell. I will use this monster blood to escape. Sarah Beth laughed again. There is no escape, fool. All of you must die now. All of you. Dun dun dun. Drinking. Catherine turned to Evan, her eyes reflecting her fear and her intent to exposit. She's like, okay, 20 years ago, I thought she was my friend. I was all alone here. I thought I could trust her, but she cast a spell on me. Her dark magic made me deaf. Okay, RL. So what you're saying is when people are deaf, it's a result of dark magic. That's the extremely sensitive and kind thing you're saying about people with very real disabilities is they've been cursed with dark magic. I'm just checking in here. That's what you're saying? Her dark magic made me deaf. She refused to let me lip read or learn to sign. Her dark magic kept Catherine from learning how to lip read or sign. Are you serious? How? RL, how? She's like, Sarah Beth forced me to cast this spell on the can of monster blood. She had warned me that I was allowed no guests. I was her slave, her personal servant. She wanted me all to herself to do her evil bidding. I don't know why she sounds like Dracula now, but she does, so just fucking deal with it. She was terrified you would learn her secret, that she would somehow free me of her spell, so Sarah Beth decided you had to die. Evan's like, we should go. Yeah. Sarah Beth's like, kill the children. Dun dun dun. The glob rolls forward. Andy grabs Evan's hand. Oh no. Then the monster blood emitted a deafening roar. Andy was staring in the doorway beyond Sarah Beth. The monster blood hadn't roared. It was Trigger! Trigger the dog! Yay! The huge dog bounded into the doorway. Yup, its deafening bark echoing off the low ceiling. Trigger enthusiastically leapt at Sarah Beth and pushed her from behind. Under the weight of the gigantic paws, Sarah Beth staggered forward, raising her hands as she collided with the monster blood. Okay, so here's the thing. Sarah then gets pulled inside the glob and presumably dies. For a kid's book, that is horrifying. But I respect it. Evan's like, get down. And Trigger was like, whatever. And he licked Evan's face. And then Trigger became a normal Cocker Spaniel size. The green glob was also growing smaller. And then the Bamer brothers fell out onto the floor. Because I guess even sociopaths get a happy ending in this book. They didn't move. They lay face down in a crumpled heap. I hope they're dead. The monster blood shrunk to its original size, lay lifeless, inert. A dull green spot on the carpet, no bigger than a tennis ball. Evan's like, Sarah Beth is gone. And Catherine's like, and I can hear again. Blah. Deafness is a curse, and the only way to fix it is to murder a cat. Blah. Anyway, Catherine's like, Sarah Beth and her spells are gone for good. And then a shadowy figure steps into the doorway. Da da da. It's his mom. It's Evan's mom. Mrs. Ross shows up. She's like, I know it's crazy to be like, hello, I'm coming back today and we're leaving today, but we have a 4 o'clock plane. We have a 4 o'clock plane to catch. Doesn't make any sense. Why are adults so useless in Goosebumps? Evan's like, have I got a story to tell you? Andy's like, wow, so you're going forever to Atlanta or whatever. Evan's like, I would love to write you. My dad has a phone credit card. Maybe I could get the number and call you. In the 90s, how they had to do that. Can I ask one small favor? Evan's like, sure. Andy's like, it's going to sound strange. Can I have a little bit of that monster blood that's left? Not a big deal or anything. Not suspicious. And Evan's like, all right, whatever. And I looked where it had come to rest on the carpet, but it was gone. Bum, bum, bum. Listen, I want to believe that's the end of the Monster Blood saga, but when I bought the first Monster Blood book for this specific thing, it came with Monster Blood Part 2 and Part 3, so I know it keeps going. I don't know when I'll get to it, but I have it, so I may as well. I just hit myself in the eyeball. So anyway, I hope you had a really good time watching me drink an entire goddamn bottle of wine. Might as well finish it. 4 sips left. The end. My final opinion is this. As far as Goosebumps books go, Monster Blood, actually not that bad. The fact that Andy is a totally separate character from Evan, super different personality, that's really impressive. RL sets up stuff that has that has payoff later. That's really good. I wish Andy had actually been evil. That's my one wish for this book. Because if there's one thing I love, it's a dramatic betrayal. I hope you enjoyed this this episode of GooseDrunks. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna go now.